All right.
Actually, do you have the power of
Your,
copies yet?
is your
They don't have
apartment,
them.
your apartment is a deluxe?
So why do you
No.
buy?
It's a
What's the
luxury?
difference? Tell me what the difference.
No, it's the regular 960, you know.
Yeah, it's a deluxe.
So what?
They don't.
Okay.
They don't like- they don't
But
Is
like-
a
your kitchen on the
synagogue
left or the
hold
right?
to a higher standard. Like Hebrew.
Right, I mean, the
national,
kitchen's on
it
this
goes to
side.
a higher
On the right.
No more
standard.
cookies. Cookies are over.
I know.
One price is no cookies.
I didn't say that. I said he should buy real pirate cookies.
They don't have them. Why?
They do it at Roma, you just have to pay more.
After the man who's buying them. I'll pay you for them. Someone's paying for them. That's up to him. I'll go to Roma.
Okay. All right, let me get started, gentlemen. Gentlemen, let's get started with the
Let's start with.
sponsors and then we'll go from there.
They can stop this.
I stopped at the beginning of the parak. The
No, you stopped at the end of the last.
The end of the last parak, and I'm starting at the beginning of the new parak. All right? Now, that's gonna teach you, Sid.
To show up.
No, I'm not, I wasn't gonna put it that way. I was simply gonna say that we saw Sid yesterday. We were glad to see he was back. Okay? But you have, sometimes we have to make a decision between going to kiddushes and going to learning. Sid, Fashta, that's only Beinenu. I know.
Obviously, the Kiddush comes.
I know.
We're Jewish, we eat.
Yesterday, they audit the person who saved the Kiddush from the Black Friday. How it went out. And nobody said anything.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Amen. Let's
I'm not sure you
okay.
Lamed days, Lamed days.
Yeah, no, I know where we are.
5 lines.
Yeah. Okay. Learning sponsorships. A year of learning. Many friends of Stephen Vigdal, Lezech Nishmat, Simcha Melech, Meir Leib Halevi. Friends of Marcy Kurtz in memory of her great niece Leah Bracha. Isaac and Evelyn Blacho in memory of his sister Chaya Rachel Bas Issa. Friends of Leonie Meiselman, Leah Saber Bas Chanok Zundel. A month of learning by Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his mother Dacia Gilbas Meir Levi and his father Meir Ben Yaakov. Chaim and Phyllis Reese in memory of his father Mordechai Ben Yom Tov. Chaim isn't here yet.
He will be here January 1st.
Oh yeah, that's when they're coming?
He had to stay in Israel a certain amount.
Yes, you gotta say
Days
6
to get
months
back.
plus. I know, 6 months plus at least one day. My brother-in-law made Aliyah the same time he did. Isaac and Evelyn Blacho in memory of his mother, Zissel Bas Chaim Yitzchak. Okay, 2 months of learning by the friends of Milton Meller in honor of his second bar mitzvah. A week of learning by Shoshana Berger in memory of her father, Tzvi Ben Shraga Dov HaKohen, Susan Fruchter Kramer in memory of her father, Moshe Ben Yechiel Mechel. Okay, we did already the 26th. Okay, so the 29th is tomorrow, so that's it. All right, so may Hashem is having a Aliyah, crank Rafiya Veltishir Hashem Matzliah, Obnei Yisrael, a good Gaben Shia. I
Amen.
remembered it this morning, right?
Right.
Okay. You know, you get out of practice, that's what. Okay, gentlemen, I'm going to start us off on Lamed Beis, Amud Beis, 32B3, maybe B4, whatever that scroll says. B3, that's what I would have guessed. With the new parak starting a new Mishnah. Okay, with a reminder that there are 2 ways in which one can make, in which a neder can apply to a second person. Okay, I'm going to pick on my buddy Ruvain here. If Ruvain vows no benefit from me, that's one way that the vow is such. Okay, he makes the vow, he's the vower. Okay, and it's right, and that's okay. Okay, and that's how it affects him. He has no benefit from me. On the other hand, a second method of a vow is that I make the vow prohibiting anything to Ruvain. Okay, or certain things. Okay, in other words, I could prohibit any benefit from me, or I could only prohibit certain items from me. And that's a second way that a vow might operate.
He makes a vow, you make a vow, you won't benefit from him.
No,
That's
I
the
said that.
Mishnah.
Well,
That's what
we'll
you
get
said.
to that. We'll
Okay.
get to that. One vow is he makes the vow not to benefit from me. The other is I make the vow prohibiting
Not
either
to benefit from him.
any benefit, okay, that's the case. All right, so let's go now. Since we pointed that out, we're ready to go with our new parak, our new Mishnah. We're going to see a number of examples here. Okay, Ein bein hamudar hana'a mechavaro. There is no difference between one who makes the vow, okay, regarding benefit from his neighbor or friend, l'mudar himenu me'achal, or me'ochel, or versus making a benefit a vow not benefiting from any food.
Or food related.
Well, we'll get to that in a second. Hold on. Okay, or any food, ele drisat haregel, with the exception of a pathway on that other person's property. Furthermore, the kelim, and regarding utensils, she'en osin bohem ochel nefesh. Okay, and the other exception besides the pathway is utensils for the preparation of foodstuffs. Okay, now, second example of a neder. Okay, hamudar ma'ochel mechavero, one who makes a vow, okay, regarding the foodstuffs of his friend or neighbor. Lo yashilenu, he cannot loan him nafa, a flour sieve, v'kavra, a grain sieve, v'reichayim, a kind of hand mill, v'tanur, or an oven, aval mash'il lo, but he may loan him chaluk, some sort of a shirt, tabat, some sort of ring, talit, a cloak or garment, unizamim, and bracelets. Okay, so we have two parts of our Mishnah. Okay, now the Gemara is going to want to deal with the following problem initially. Starting off, Man Tana, who is the Tana according to whom this Mishnah is stated in it. Amar Rav Adabar Ahava, he claims Rav Adabar Ahava, Rabbi Eliezer, that it belongs to Rabbi Eliezer. Why? Right? The Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer teaches as follows: Rabbi Eliezer Omer, afilu vitur asur b'mudar hana'a. Okay, I'm going to translate it this way. Even in regards to, according to Art Scroll, they use the word indulgences. It's a bad translation. I did not look what Koren hadn't to have a chance. However, I'm going to use approximately tips or gratuities.
Even that, the
Okay.
customary
And
extra.
by the way, the indulgences, the reason I don't like indulgences, because that smacks of what the cat,
Oh.
exactly. Okay, so what Rabbi Eliezer is saying is benefits, extra benefits,
It's
I
the
think is a better,
baker's dozen.
we'll get to that and explain in a second.
How do we work if it has easement rights? Everybody has the easement right on the guy's property.
That's a separate issue. I'll come back to it. Good question, but I'll come back to
That is what Johnson says.
it. Okay,
There's the word,
that's what?
that's what they do have.
And Corin? Okay, so benefits, I think, in other words, what example can I say as a benefit? Michael's example was the one Art Scroll suggests. We could think of others. Okay, you buy your baker, right? What's a baker's dozen? He throws in, instead of 12,
There's an
13
extra
items.
Not anymore.
Well, I don't know. Okay, all I'm saying is we could use other examples. You go to the produce man and you're buying a X number of apples, he throws in an extra apple or two. Okay, other kinds of examples. So those benefits,
That's what we're talking about.
okay, that's what we're referring to when he says when Rabbi Eliezer says a vitor, any kind of extra benefit.
And
That-
this is all informed by what
Well,
we
well,
learned
yeah.
earlier about
Okay.
undercharging
Okay,
or
well,
overcharging.
So, and what happens? That Rabbi Eliezer considers a benefit for the person, and therefore, when there's a vow prohibiting
Benefit.
benefits, that is included. Okay? So that's why Rav Ada Barava is suggesting that our Mishnah must be according to Rabbi Eliezer. Now, Gemara is going to have a problem with this, okay, and trying to clarify, as we're going to see momentarily. Hamudar ma'achal or me'ochel or ma'achal mechavero lo yeshilenu. The language that the Mishnah is citing seems to be implying that he's taking the vow that the person should not benefit from foodstuffs. Foodstuffs. What is included when we say no benefit from foodstuffs? Do we imply food only, or do we apply any items that facilitate the making of the foodstuffs? Is that okay? Good language?
Yeah, that's not bad.
Okay.
That's very good.
Okay, that's what we're going to try to get at. And when we clarify, are we talking about items that facilitate foodstuffs? What is the limit? Because after all, our Mishnah did spell out certain particular items very clearly, where it says you cannot loan it to the person.
And others where you can.
Okay, but then the Sefer of the Mishnah implied certain other elements, which we might assume, and I use the underline the word might here, have nothing to do with foodstuffs, but in theory, we could darshan it differently. Okay, so that's where we're headed now as we go to Lamed Gimel, today's daf. Okay, everybody with me? Vaha min hamachal nadar. But the Gemara says, but hold on a second. He only made it, it would seem from the language that he used in the neder, that he's really only referring to foodstuffs only. Okay? So now let's try to, and that's a question mark there. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Levi, what does he say? What did the person making the vow actually say or potentially have said? Ba'omer hanaat ma'achalcha alai. Okay, that any benefit of your foodstuffs.
The extra word, benefit.
Benefit here of something in regarding the making of the food. Maybe that's what it's
I could
involved.
say I'm
The word
claiming
machal
your
is still the
food,
same.
or I
Ha-
can
the-
say I'm
any
claiming-
One guy at a time. please.
I can
Okay.
say I'm claiming your food, and that would be limited to actual edibles. But when I say I'm claiming benefit from your food,
It could imply
that is
more than
legal.
just the actual food
That's
items,
correct.
the edible items. Okay, everybody pick up on that. Okay? All right, so now, Ema, I might have said then, if you're prohibiting any benefit from possible food items, well, what other benefits could accrue to a person other than edibles? The Gemara is now going to raise that as its question. Ema, I might say, shelo yil'os chitin, that one cannot take pieces of wheat, chew them, and use that as what we would call a pulse, a paste to put on a wound. V'yitain al makato, because then that person will be gaining benefit of an act that leads to some consumption of, okay, even
Use
if
the
it's
food
not a
for another
foodstuff,
purpose.
even if it's not edible eating it. Okay? Amar Rava, says Rava as follows, giving another example. Ba'omer, Maybe it's when the person saying the vow says, Hana'ah hamavi'ali de ma'achalcha Allah. Okay? Maybe that's the example that any benefit that may lead to being able to derive from your food stuff.
Benefit from
Okay? So if I'm saying I'm going to forbid myself any kind of benefit from the food that you might be providing, then maybe I can't use something or have something if I'm going to be eating by you, like wearing a nice shirt.
We haven't gotten there yet.
We'll get there in a second, or other kinds of things. Right, okay? Green.
What are you doing? White shirts.
Okay. All right, what happens? So in other words, maybe it implies more than that. It implies implying indirect food providers are unacceptable to the person. Okay. Amar Rav Papa, says Rav Papa. What might we be talking about in that case if you're forbidding then indirect or secondary food facilitators or providers for the person? For example, sak lahavi perot, some bag, right, that can carry the food. V'chamor lahavi alav perot, or the donkey that's going to be carrying the package of the food. Va'afilu tzana ba'alma, or even a basket in general, that might be prohibited because the basket could hold the food or fruit, whatever. Hana'ah hamavi'a lidei ma'achahu. All of those are examples, says Rav Papa, okay, where we could have benefit from something that's providing the food, and even though it's not a food itself, even though it's not a means of making the food, it's still going to provide benefit from the food.
That would include false teeth.
Yeah.
I don't know how many
Well,
people would
I
borrow
don't
false
normally
teeth.
borrow your.
Okay, let's go on. By Rav Papa. So Rav Papa further asks to try to clarify what is the limit when we're talking about secondary facilitators, okay, additional providers towards this, okay? Sus lirchov alav. Maybe we're talking about a horse to ride on, to get to the banquet, the Uber, or get to the banquet that the person is providing. If Ruvain says, I can't have any benefit of any items at the meal that he's providing, does that mean that I can't borrow,
Get a ride from him.
right? Get a ride from him to the restaurant where we're having the siyum? Is that the case? Okay. V'tabat lirotba, or maybe a ring, okay, to show off at that event. Okay. Or, okay, so these secondary items, but it still doesn't address totally Sid's question about the right of way. Okay, didn't forget it, Sid. Okay. Okay, Mahu, what's the situation then? So the Gemara now tells us, Mifsak umazil ba'are, mai. Okay, what happens then if we say that there's a question of limits? All right. Okay, and the shortcut, that's its question. All right. We already said at the beginning of the Mishnah that there's no exclusion, even regard to benefit of foodstuffs regarding the pathway.
Because you get to the Kiddush while there's still.
Right.
Sweet
Okay, you
bread.
might say, well, it's still sweetbreads. Okay, maybe you're using it as a shortcut, okay, to get there. And maybe through that, the person's that property, they said, no, you can't benefit.
I'm implying not only he, everyone.
No, it's,
No, it's
but
only the
it wouldn't apply to everyone, because when he makes his vow, remember, he's saying it in regards to a particular person. Meishi Pipik cannot benefit from me whatsoever. Okay? That's
This is my Shapific saying I won't benefit from him.
either way.
So he can't go on.
Either way. Okay, my tashma. Listen to the following. Aval mash'il. But says the Gemara, hold on a second. Didn't we find later in the Sefer of our Mishnah, mash'ilo chaluk v'talit nizamim utabaot? Hechidami. If it says that under those circumstances, he could loan him a shirt or a cloak or earrings or rings, whatever. Hey, how is that possible? Ilema shaloli ra'ot bahem. If we're saying that we're prohibiting it, and therefore even secondary facilitators regarding foodstuffs coming to the banquet,
Ring at the
okay,
wedding.
whatever. The point is, okay, you can't use that as proof. Sri chalamema. So then what do we have to say? What's the situation? You're prohibiting benefit that brings any amount, any way of food. Elalav afilu l'ra'ot bahem. But no, we're saying it even applies to those secondary
Does not apply.
items.
You're allowed to lend him the diamond ring if you know he's going to
No.
show it off at the wedding.
No, you're not allowed. That's the whole point. Even the secondary facilitators are also prohibited, and therefore you can't use that as a text to show that we can make it the difference between real food preparation items and secondary items. That's
Love. So how do we have to learn it?
right, all right.
Afilu
Ukatani
li'ros
mashila.
bahem.
Okay, and therefore we want to say, but it teaches in our Sefer that it says that he can loan it to him. No, that's not the case, he says. Le'olam shelo lir'ot. Okay, but no, we're saying no, that he cannot use it. It cannot be for showing. Va'ide dikatane reisha. But since we taught in the earlier part of our Mishnah, lo yashilenu, linguistic parallel, that it's there, it says you can't lend it. Tana Sefer, mashilo. Therefore it teaches, okay, that you can lend it. Right. So that's the point. Okay, so those secondary items, okay, is a stylistic issue. Okay, let's go on. Yes.
You know,
No.
what I don't understand with this whole thing is how restricted it is. You have a primary, you know, and then you create a secondary, like with the shirts. And all
Mel,
this. Wait,
you're right. You're right.
It's a mess.
But Mal, there is no chesed here.
Why?
Why?
You
Because the
eliminated
person, is making a neder.
And then there are la rishon on one specific.
That
situation.
depends on his language. That depends on the language of what he said. That's why the beginning of the daf raise, this one says he phrased it this way. This one he says he phrased it that way, so on and so forth. Depending on the language of the person, that's the question of what I'm trying to understand what was their intent when they made that vow, to what degree they were going to say they did not want to either benefit from that person or allow that person to benefit from them. So that's part of the issue. It's a problem of language. Okay?
No, it's not. Right.
Okay, the issue is, right, you're right, Mel, that there should be chesed there, but when a person gets angry at somebody and they spout off something,
It's all in secondary source.
it's
No,
what,
it's secondary and tertiary.
okay,
Second, when you make a vow, a food-related vow, it includes food and anything directly used with food. But Mel is right. It does not include
It
lending
shouldn't
him
have-
a broom or lending him a ring.
right, things like that. Okay, but I wanted to
even though you're
clarify.
going to a kiddush.
I wanted to, in the rain, right? Okay, but that's the whole point. You got to keep in mind, they argue about the language because they don't know what the intent when the person said, Okay? There. Okay, new Mishnah. B'chol davar she'ein osim bo ochel nefesh. Okay? And in any situation where we're talking about food preparation, okay? What are we dealing with then? Okay, what about those other items? The sieve and the mill
No,
and all
now
these
we're
things
talking
and
about
other things.
The Mishnah says, when we're talking about
It's
kalim that
talking
are
about
not
those items as well.
No,
Oh,
look at
yes.
the word.
Makom shemaskirin kiyotze bahen. Okay,
Kol davar she'ein oisin bo my oifel nefesh.
those items
Non-food-related
that are
kalim.
not food-related preparation. That's what I said. Okay, those items are not food-related preparation. Okay, makom shemaskirin kiyotze bahen, in a location where they rent out those similar items. Asur, it is forbidden. Okay, that's the point. All right. Why is that the
You're
case?
benefiting, giving
What
them
his
money.
person is going to be, he's saving the money from renting those items. So that is considered benefit, and therefore that's why it's forbidden. Okay? All right. Miklal deresha. Okay, since our earlier statement, right? Afal pi she'ein maskirin. Okay, we'll generalize from this initial statement, okay,
They don't-
that even when they don't rent, man Tana, who then is the Tana here? Amar Rav Adabar Ahava. Again, he's saying the same thing. Who is it? Rabbi Eliezer. It's based the view of Rabbi Eliezer, who still said, as we saw in the previous Mishnah, afilu vitur, any benefit, okay, is not accepted. All right? Matnitin, another Mishnah. Hamudar hana'a mechavero, one who makes the vow, okay, prohibiting benefit from his neighbor. Shokelo et shiklo. He may, and I'm going to put in the word here, nevertheless, do the following. He may pay his machatzita shekel for him to the Beis Hamikdash. Number one. Number two, uporea et chovo. Okay, he may pay up a debt that he owes. Okay, we'll see. Number three, umachzirlo et avedato, and he may return a lost object to that person. And the Gemara Mishnah continues, clarifying that makom shenot lin aleha sachar, and in a place where normally you would get compensation for returning a person's item, okay? And the vow is such that you shouldn't benefit, you vow that you shouldn't benefit, or that person vowed that you can't benefit from them, right? Either way, tipol hana'a lehekdesh. That compensation goes to the gizbar, goes to the Beis Hamikdash treasurer, okay?
What if the benefit is?
One guy at a time. It's a fundraiser.
What if the reward should be compensation for cost? That was me, I'm going and bringing back the bull.
Good question.
That's a
Good
benefit.
question. That's still considered a benefit to the person, and therefore they
You now
can't,
have something you wouldn't have had.
right, still considered a benefit.
No,
In other words,
where's
I,
loss? I'm saying I
So
would've
what?
lost
Loss is
when-
right, I understand. Your question is, if I had to give up my time that I would normally have been paid
No, I have
for,
to pay an Uber to take me
okay?
there.
But I have to give up my time. Ordinarily, okay, I get paid by the hour, but I used 1 or 2 hours to find your lost object. Okay, so shouldn't I get paid for my time? The answer is no. You don't, if the person vowed, if that was the vow.
And you don't
That's the
get
point.
reimbursed for
And you don't get
expenses.
reimbursed expenses either. That's a second separate issue, but that wasn't Steve's question exactly.
Rabbi, when he says to repay his loan, means out of his own pocket, he's gonna repay. In other words,
Could be. That's the point.
It's qualified in the minute.
Let's go
it
on.
could be either way.
Right. Gemara. Alma, therefore, what happens? Avruche are ba'almahu. We're calling this the chasing a lion away. In other words, there's no benefit idea for protecting, but rather you're simply ensuring that there's no loss to the person under that circumstances. So it's not considered a benefit. Okay? So that's why we say in regards to the first two examples, that of paying the half shekel, because then you don't have the gizbar on your neck from the Beis Hamikdash. Because why? Because everybody, the gizbar says when they do the tamid, they say this is for people that gave, this is people for not gave, people whose money got lost, etc., etc., etc. Okay?
With
That's-
regard to the loan,
Okay, regard to the loan.
with regard to the loan, the Mefarshim explain. I need $1 to put into the pishka when it comes around collecting. So I say to Reuven, give me $1. And Reuven gives me the $1. And I say, I'll run over to Doris, I'll break a 20, I'll give you. And Reuven says, don't bother, someday I'll get $1 from you.
Right.
So
That would be a possibility.
Abrami giving Reuven the $1 really doesn't get me off the hook because I
No.
wasn't on the hook in the first place.
Could be. All right, Avruche, all right. So that's his point. Vishare, and that is permitted, says the Gemara. Mantana, again, according to whom? Who teaches it? Amar Rav Hoshea, says Rav Hoshea. Zo divrei, as we go to the next Amud, divrei Chanan. That's the view of Chanan. Now, you're going to ask me what's Chanan's explanation? Hold on, the Gemara is going to give us that momentarily. Okay? However, before it gives us what Chanan's position is, it wants to tell us there's a challenge to Chanan by Ravi. Rava says as follows: Afilu tema divrei hakol. No, you could even argue that it's according to everybody. Okay? When is that the case? Gabe mudar hana'ah. Okay? It's in regards to a situation where one has made a vow not to benefit. The Yahiv almanat shelo lifroa, where it's given a situation where he's able to pay back pay back a loan where there is no specified
There's no
date,
pressure.
okay, to pay back by a certain time. Okay? My Chanan.
No, not to by a certain time. There's no
There's
Pressure
no
to ever
pressure
pressure.
to ever pay it back. There's no, it's not a
Look
time,
at-
it's not
It's
time
not a, well, give
generated.
me and I'll give
It's-
it back
Yeah, there's
Monday.
no
It's
specific
no-
date when to pay it back, so
but
there's no
there's never-
pressure.
If you
Uh,
never pay
I
it
can,
back,
I
no,
can hear anything
no.
when it's three people.
No, it's not a, no, what's, no,
open ended.
okay, right, there's no pressure on him to pay back because there's no specific time. That's what it said, okay? My Chanan, but what then is the view of Chanan? The Tnan, who taught as follows: Mi shehalach l'medinat hayam. Take the example that we found elsewhere, where a man has gone on a journey, okay? And what happens? Did he or did he not leave enough money for his wife under those circumstances? Okay? Va'amad echad upirnes et ishto. And somebody else, a neighbor, comes forward and provides the parnasa for the wife while he's away. Okay? Chanan Amar, according to Chanan, Ibed et me'otav. The man has lost his money. In other words, he gets no compensation back from the husband who traveled away. Okay? I won't know if I would say that. Okay? Nechlaku alav b'nei kohanim gedolim. And Hanan was challenged by the sons of the Kohen Gedolim, Va'amru, because they say as follows, under that circumstance, Ishava kama hotzi vito, that he should make an oath how much money he put out for this woman, and then take it and collect it. Okay? Now, who is he going to collect it from? Ideally, the husband. Ideally.
Who else is there?
Look at the Art Scrolls note, you'll see. You go into detail there too. Okay? Amar Rav Dosa ben Hirkanes, Kidivrehem. And Rav Dosa ben Hyrcanus agrees with the view of the Bnei Kohanim Godolim as opposed to the view of Hanan. Okay? Now, Amar Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, says Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Yafeh Amar Hanan. He agrees more with the view of Hanan instead. Heniach meotav al keren hatzvi. But what happened? Hanan made a very worthwhile statement. Why? Because in reality, what happens? It's like putting your money on the horns of a deer. In other words, it's out of here. It's gone.
You can't catch.
No way you can catch it. Okay. So at this point, we see Rava holds like, the Divrei Hakol and Rav Hoshaya held like Hanan. Now, Rava lo amar ke Rav Hoshaya. Rava didn't say like the view of Rav Hoshaya, to agree with Hanan. The kamokim la the matnitin ke Divrei Hakol, because he established our text based on everybody. Rav Hoshaya lo amar ke Rava, and Rav Hoshaya did not say according to the view of Rava. Why? Gezerah shelo yilifra mishum lifra, because the rabbis made a decree, okay, that one would not carry out a situation for satisfying a debt that had no specific date to it, lest they take an attitude that you could do it when there were dates specified and there was pressure to pay by time. And that's the point. Okay, let's go on now. Machzir lo et avedato. Maybe there's a difference between the first two examples that we got in our Mishnah about shekel and paying debt versus the example of returning the lost object. Okay, so we're discussing that a little bit more. Plige ba Rav Ami v'Rav Asi. There was a disagreement between Rav Ami and Rav Asi on this example. Why should that person be able to do so? Chad Amar, according to one, said, Lo shanu ela b'shenichsei machzer, asurin al bal aveda. One was of the impression that he said, when we're dealing with the possessions that need to be returned, okay, the lost items, asurin al ba'al aveda, that those items are prohibited on the person who found them. Okay, because when he returns them to him, mid'am denafshe kamahadale. Okay, he's returning what actually originally belonged to him. And that's the case. So he's simply returning what belonged to him. Others want to say he's doing the mitzvah of Aveda, Hachsarat Aveda, and therefore that's why he can do it. But the implication is that's the situation. He can return it. Aval nichse ba'al avade, but the property that belonged to the person who lost it, okay, what's the situation there? Asurin al machzir, when they are prohibited to the one who wants to return it, lo kamahadale, he cannot return it. De kamahane le pruta de Rav Yosef, because then were he to return it, he would be transgressing the rule that we understand or that we call the pruta of Rav Yosef. Now, what is that? I'm just briefly going to tell you, but I want you to, if you're using Art Scroll on 33B2, note number 13, okay, you can read that in detail, right? But basically, the argument between Rav Yosef and Rava is in regards to the halachic status of a finder of a lost item, and whether we're going to consider that individual a shomer chinam or a shomer sachar. That's the part of the issue. Okay, that may be,
He's returning this to Reuben.
but that's only if you take the using it as
The fruit of Rabbi Yosef is by undertaking to return the object to Reuben. The time it takes me to go from my apartment to Reuben's apartment, if somebody comes by and says, "Can I?"
yeah,
have a
well,
fruit
that's
dog to
you're
buy
going
food?"
into the
So
whole
you
note.
say, "I'm
That's the
sorry,
whole
I'm gonna
note.
take a mitzvah
Yes,
and I
but that's why,
exactly what-
that's the
what
whole
fruit
note.
of Rabbi
Yeah,
Yosef
that somebody's coming to you at that time and asking for a
is.
donation.
Say, "I can't."
Okay, 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 right, so that's why the question is
he
the
a
person a
shomer
shomer chinam or a shomer sach? That's why the issue. Okay, do you have more responsibility? Okay, or less, or no responsibility when you're supposedly taking care of that lost object? Okay, that's why I said, read the
and
note.
nafkamina, whether there's a shomer chinam or shomer sacher, if it gets lost,
If
then
something
he's a
happens, then
shomer sacher. He has
then
to
you
pay.
have to do, you have greater responsibility and you have
Right.
to do something. Right, okay? So that's to finish up. V'chad amar. But one says, the other says, afilu nichse bal aveda asurin al machsi. Even when the property of the person who lost it is forbidden on the one who might return it, mahadar le, he does return it. Why? Umishum pruta de Rav Yosef lo shachiach. Because the situation of trying to say, oh, maybe there's going to be somebody come to my door to ask for a donation while I'm dealing with taking care of the object of a lost object to going back, etc., doesn't happen that often. Okay? And so therefore, that's why we stop right there as well. Okay?
I'm gonna hang out in front of you.
And look for a
Every
donation.
time you open the door.
Wait till I move, then you won't find me at
Moving?
that.
Where you moving?
We are buying an apartment in Yarmouth.
A smaller one?
Yes,
Where?
Why?
Which building?
Why? Oh, to get back the shorter trip.
in Yarmouth D.
Which-
Oh, okay.
where?
Oh, you're gonna
Second
be
floor.
Reuben's neighbor?
We're buying Stephanie and Freddie Mortman's, his
Where are
apartment.
they going?
She
They
still
have an
has,
appointment
Oh,
on that
they
fourth
she
still
still
have
has her
upstairs. So
apartment
he's going
upstairs.
making Leah.
Oh, when is it gonna happen?
When,
No, the
probably
second
the end of
floor.
the season,
That's the second floor, right?
second floor.
So you're making a Eureka.
That's true. I'm
Following
moving
me,
down
following
to
me.
move closer to
I
the show.
understand. I hear you. I
Okay?
mean,
But,
I
uh,
went
but
from
lucky-
Now I have a
Wilmington-
Swiss. I have a big Swiss.
But the building is becoming a chashuv building.
No, we'll see. Hopefully
You
we'll
want
be
to
able.
join us in our learning every day?
But you're lucky you have a big divide from A to D.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Yeah, we are putting a bid in. Okay, and hopefully we'll be
Thanks
able to
a lot.
sell our place.
You could probably get a huge
That's the
amount for
question.
it.
I don't know.
Take a look at what they're going for.
That isn't the issue. The issue is, some people say, I only want a first floor.
Well, but
The
that's
other
old
people say,
that youthful
I
people like you.
only want a lake view. That's what others argue. So
Doesn't
we'll
your
see.
apartment have a lake view?
And the
Yeah, we
back.
have two lake views. Okay, we're right in the middle and we can look at one lake
Oh,
from one
wow.
porch from one
So I
side and
would
we.
charge extra for that.
So, but it won't happen probably till the end of the season.
But you're already committed to buy it.
Yeah, they accepted our bid. So,
There's
want
an
a second floor.
apartment
Send me
on
my
the
neighbor.
fourth floor of A.
You should move
That's
to
for
the first
sale for
floor.
$4.25. Fourth floor.
I understand.
So you may be able to get a decent amount of money for your apartment.
We'll see.
Melvin? Yeah.
We'll still be friends with everybody in Wolverton.